The way I interpreted the way I interpreted it as was, you know how they say that before, if you know you're about to die, your life flashes before your eyes. And I interpreted that as that axe was coming down, this flashback was the prominent memory that Clementine was remembering just before she died. Um, as again, because Lucky Jack said this is how their journey sort of began and everything comes in full circle. I really appreciated the placement of this flashback because when I believed that Clementine died, um, it was very therapeutic to be able to still play as her and see her alive and well one last time, even though I knew she was dead. So this is sort of like a therapeutic way for me to get some closure. Is one final time I get to play as Clementine, even though I know what her ultimate fate is. Um, Sort of because I was already missing her. As soon as I saw that axe coming down, I was already missing her, and so this was like a way for me to ease into letting her go, and and then a lot of the stuff that they were saying, especially at the end of that sequence in the car with AJ and how she would like never leave him. I think that her saying that right after you see the scene prior had way more impact than if they had placed it anywhere else in the season. So for me, I thought it was perfectly placed. But let's talk about Eddie, Jacob.
Yeah, uh, apparently, I guess it's implied that, or at least the wiki says that it's implied Delta was the one that burned down McCarroll Ranch, because the first thing Eddie says to you before he tries to stab you is, "I won't let one of you savages take a kid."
Yeah. So for the people who don't remember, Eddie was from where?
Wyatt story from 400 Days.
Wyatt's story from 400
Dang.
Days. If you remember, somehow Wyatt, depending on your choices, always gets separated from Eddie.
Mhm.
Either Eddie goes and investigates something and you drive away without him, or you investigate something and Eddie drives away without
Right.
you. So, and you never really hear from him again until now. So, I thought that was a really cool nod to 400 Days. Because I did we not see Eddie in at Carver's?
No, we didn't. We saw Wyatt.
Oh, you're right. That's true. We saw White, but we didn't see Eddie. That is. Oh yeah, that's really interesting.
I love how Kent Muddle bluntly explained, "Yes, that is Eddie. We got the same voice actor and everything." And then the next paragraph, he begins by saying, "Before anyone asks in the comments, but why though?" Apparently, it was an in joke at the studio because they modeled the character model for Eddie after a Telltale employee, and that
Hmm.
same Telltale employee created the McCarroll Ranch storyline. So to them, it was an in joke to kill him off with his baby.
Oh,
Oh.
dang. I didn't know that. I didn't know
Wow.
that it was like separate employees coming up with separate elements. I always thought it was like a design by
Interesting.
committee kind of thing. Oof.
The biggest thing that I wanted to discuss in this about this sequence is that this these people that Clementine killed, they all were arguably innocent because all they were trying to do was they were trying to defend themselves from Delta or whoever attacked the ranch, um, including the woman who was taking care of AJ. Um, they all assumed, understandably so, that Clementine was with the same people who attacked them. And the woman assumed that Clementine was there to take away AJ, which she was, but not the way that she thought she was going to take AJ. So, so it's an interesting sequence if you don't catch it that this is probably the first time or one of the very very few times that Clementine actually kills innocent people. What are your thoughts on that?
I I feel like with almost all cases, except arguably, depending on what you investigate, I feel like almost all the cases it was self defense. Except for, I mean, so with the first guy, it was self defense to fire at him,
The
and then
stranger.
and then you're given a choice whether or not to end him or not. To which I did because I felt like I didn't want him to end up coming back at some point to threaten me and AJ. Hark, I believe you didn't you did spare the guy on the bridge when you were first entering, the guy who shot the horse.
I think, yeah, I think but it was more because I was like, I'm not wasting my
Right.
bullets on you.
And
I
then
think is what I said.
then the fire that so it actually is kind of odd. Like I feel like in those first couple moments they actually give you three different choices. Technically, you have the first one, which was you had the chance. The guy was clearly right there, and but he had no ammo, so he was technically unarmed at that point. The second one was the guy who was half on fire, and he was begging for a mercy kill. And then the third one was outright self defense because the guy was firing an automatic weapon at you until you ran up and took him out. And then finally, the fourth one you could argue was self defense, but it was like you didn't know whether or not the woman was. We didn't know if the gun was fully loaded. We didn't know if it was just for show. But Clem had to make a call and they had to take that choice. So I was just was now realizing that those four deaths, or at least two out of the four choices, that they actually managed to sandwich very different scenarios very close together on how you could decide to go about that.
Yeah, so that whole scene was really interesting, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Those people were the workers at the McCarroll Ranch were innocent, pretty much. They were taking care of AJ. They were probably taking care of other people. It was probably a really, really good place. So yeah, so because we're playing from Clementine's perspective, the hero of the story, you don't think much about it until you get to that final room, and then you realize that these people were taking care of AJ, and Clementine just killed a bunch of innocent people, and it's dark. It's probably one of the darkest moments in the whole series for Clementine's character, especially.
Yeah, I guess one could argue the ends justify the means, but at the end, do they really? It's a big gray area. The big question, yeah, the big question in my mind is what relationship do these people have with David and Dr. Lingard?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea. I think it's implied heavily that this experience deeply affected Clementine because she has been having nightmares about it. You've seen one of the nightmare sequences, and I think a huge reason why she has nightmares about it is because she knows that she killed innocent people. I think she realizes, especially at the end, that these people were just defending themselves, and they weren't quote unquote the bad guys necessarily. But obviously in those situations, you can't just be like, I'm innocent, I'm not here to whatever. Like, if she put herself in their shoes, she would have done the exact same thing. If she was that woman in that room, with AJ, and somebody else came in there, she would have pulled out her gun without asking any questions and fired whoever that person was as well. So, I definitely don't think she blames any of them for doing what they did, and therefore she feels guilty about it. So I think that's really important, and might be part of the reason why I feel like there was a huge shift in Clementine's personality from season 3 to season 4. She seemed a lot more hardened in season 3 versus in season 4, I think, and part of it might be also because now she's taking care of AJ. But I feel like this experience at this ranch might have played a factor in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
They also tossed in a line where it's like, yeah, this pole area is a war zone, so we can't go back to Richmond. And then I'm like, I don't know if that explains why she didn't go back to Richmond, because it's like she just assumes that because this area is affected that Richmond is too. She didn't think to go and check to see if Javi's okay at least.
I guess not. So I guess so. This was the official proof that. So this is the official like confirmation that Richmond probably was involved with the war with Delta and everything, or.
Well,
That's what. Go ahead.
the developers have confirmed that Javi and his surviving members of his family are still alive. They're just off camera. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was Let's Playing the game live, my viewers kept saying that this proved that Richmond had fallen during the war, and I didn't catch that it was definitively true that it had fallen. So yeah, I think Jacob might be right. Maybe maybe she should not have assumed that things at Richmond were bad. I don't know.
Just that there was also that little touching moment where, as Clem first found AJ initially was afraid of Clementine. It was almost either he had forgotten about her, depending on how long it had been, or he just was scared to see her having just shot the person who had been taking care of her for so long. For so long.
I'm sure that didn't help. Yeah.
But I was gonna say, but by the end, when they were both in the car, seeing that he reached out for her hand and did want to make another attempt at the two of them being together, I did like that. And then, and then it cuts to black again one more time as we zoom in on his face. Just, because, that was when it, like, dawned on me for some reason. I don't know why it took me this long to realize that, like, putting into perspective, a lot of these kids, most of the kids we've seen up until this point, they all at least knew what life was like before the apocalypse had started. AJ has never had a chance to know anything else but.
And to piggyback off of what you just said, I do really like the fact that they made it a point to show that AJ was affected by the death of that woman. That he wasn't just, here's Clementine, I'm saved. Like, he actually had a lot of reservations about what Clementine had done. So I'm happy that they did that, because I think that's very realistic, and I think it makes the gravity of what Clementine had done more real. So, okay. So then we finally move over to controlling AJ a week later. But not completely controlling AJ, as Lucky Jack so cleverly told me during the Let's Play. What did you say about the dialogue mechanism for AJ?
So I love this, and I almost would like if other games did something similar. I would argue Fallout 4 almost was kind of like that originally before they patched in real dialogue. Was the way that AJ's dialogue trees worked was that you weren't controlling directly what was about to come out of his mouth. You were controlling how he thinks and how he perceives the things around him, and then from there he'll say what he wants to say depending on what you just told him to accept. It's like, for instance, so it cuts and he's fishing in the river. I caught all the fish, just to say,
yeah, I did not.
Depending, and regardless of what's happening, we also saw Rosie. The dog was with us again, and Rosie's barking, and immediately as he's barking, she's barking, AJ, we get a couple bubbles, things like, "Oh, stop mocking me," or, "Oh, well, yeah, you're a good girl," and so. But like the idea is like you could give him the idea of how should he perceive this. Should he take this as playfulness? Should he take this as mockery? Should he? And I thought that was a nice twist to still keep me, for me to put a different kind of thought on choices, and still have that little element of surprise of what was actually going to be said or done.
You mean you get a moment briefly going into the dock house or boat house or whatever that is, and then, for me at least, 10, alive and well, appears, and we have a conversation. I think this actually is after, right, first he catches a hold of Clementine's hat.
Yep.
And then we have a conversation with 10, for me at least, and he sort of like apologizes for his behavior back on the bridge and all that good stuff, which I was really pleased by. Other people, however, had a different experience with 10.
Yes, you see 10 as a walker. And I chose to put him down.
It's a little. I feel bad that 10 was a walker alone and not as a walker with his sister, which is what he wanted.
Yeah.
You know.
Details.
And then for me, I decided to do what James had done. I threw a rock and distracted 10 away. Although I was worried, like I almost was like, oh geez, does every like well, man, at this point we have no idea who's with us or who's around, but I just didn't know if it was going to be like. I hope that it wouldn't come back to bite me in the butt later. But yeah, I had him just distract 10 away, not use a bullet.
What? Okay, so you just didn't want to use a bullet. That was the main reason why you didn't shoot.
And it also would have made noise. But also, I felt like AJ wouldn't have wanted to let it like almost. I don't know. I feel like. Because at the end of the day, like he felt horrible about having to do that to 10 still because 10 was his first friend. I don't know. Hope I didn't come across as inconsistent.
Yeah. Then Ruby, I think, appears regardless. And you have a little bit of a chat. She notices you have the hat, and she says, "Oh, you should probably keep it or wear it," or something along those lines. And then AJ, I don't remember what he says, but he definitely doesn't say anything along the lines of, "Yeah, I'll keep it or wear it myself." He says that he would rather not. And I didn't realize the real reason why he said that is because Clementine might want it, but I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
So that was a really cool little twist that they put in there.
I think he said he couldn't wear it because his afro was too big.
Oh, is that why he
I don't
said
think
it?
I heard that or something.
I don't remember him saying that. Maybe it was a different dialogue choice that I picked. But then he takes, well, for me, an empty bucket of no fish, and then the music starts playing. Take us back. Yes, that song.
It's a good song.
It's a good song. And I was ready for the credits to start rolling as soon as I finished walking slowly towards the gates of the school.
We see the surviving Erickson kids doing stuff, like Willie's in a tree, Omar's putting up a sign that says "Don't F with us" next to Abel's corpse, or Walker Abel.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
Asim comes back from hunting, and he and Ruby hold hands.
I was happy for that.
I love that. I thought that was super awesome. And and then you reach the gates and you go through and the camera pans and I'm like, oh, okay, end credits. Oh no, wait. then we have what I call the Return of the King sequence, where you think things are about to end but it keeps going. It's about to. Oh no, it's still
Almost.
going. Okay.
Yeah.
What were you about to say, Lucky?
I was going to say, we also, depending on who you saved at the gate, we would also see either Violet or, depending on who's surviving, like their. So, anyway.
Right. And then the music dies down because the scene continues, and then you drop off the fish or no fish right next to very rarely seen Omar, very rarely seen Chef Omar. And then the big reveal happens, which for me was a very pleasant and confusing surprise.
Yeah.
Because I am 100% with Lucky Jack when I was like, this doesn't make any sense, but I guess I don't care if it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Because based on the discoloration of Clementine's, not just her face, but her whole body was discolored, it made me feel like that means that it spread past her leg.
Right.
So no hacking of her leg was going to save her at that point. So that's why I was like, based on physical appearance of Clem, I was very confused, but I was like, I don't care. So
I was, and I was also thinking up to this point, like, and we'll get to that in a bit, but like I was also thinking to this point, like, they were still surrounded by walkers on all ends in a barn. It seemed very like this wasn't like with Clem where she could sneak out through a back door unscathed or whatever. Like they were in a barn and there were walkers everywhere. And when the reveal was first shown, I genuinely was thinking like it was maybe like a dream sequence or something.
Yeah, I thought so.
Like maybe this was just a hallucination and it was going to be really sad because it was going to be like, especially like with how like, we'll get to that later, but especially with how cheesy and almost overly like positive all the dialogue was after all of that. Like, this is the best day of my life. And I'm like, this seems like a very sudden like U-turn from what had just happened.
Maybe it actually was a dream. Lucky Jack. Maybe.
I'm not going to think about that. Right.
You go into this school and you see all these random names that weren't there before. I know. I'm sorry.
I want to accept it. I do. It's like it doesn't make sense, but my brain can't make sense of it, but my heart wants it to be like completely like genuine.
The developers have explained how Clem survived.
Right.
There was like a couple factors. The fact that her bite was bitten underneath the skin mark from when Minerva stabbed her with the axe, so all the walker blood was flowing in but bleeding out right under the hole. And the discoloration on her face was from exhaustion more so than the walker venom.
And stuff. That's fair.
Well, I'm glad they had tried to address and explain it.
Right.
That's fair.
They also said the barn scene only took place 15 minutes after she got bit, as opposed to Lee, who passed out for a couple hours before he decided to cut off his arm.
Yeah, Lee, I definitely knew, mostly based on the comics.
Yeah.
I definitely knew that when they were talking about cutting off his arm, I was like, it's not going to matter. Like, it's not going to matter at that point. So.
And they also did say Robert Kirkman okayed the ending, if that means anything.
That's
okay.
That's nice.
I actually, that does make me feel better. If Robert Kirkman thinks it works, then it works.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mark? Were you confused but willing to ignore the confusion, or you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense, I'll buy it?
I will say, when I first heard Clem's voice before, when it's just focusing on AJ's face, I thought that was like he was like, seeing like a ghost or something. I'll be honest, or it was like, like a dream sequence. But then when I saw her with crutches and an amputated leg, I was so elated. Like I was, because I was tearing up at her death sequence. So when I saw this big reveal, I was just so happy. I was really satisfied too, because I thought it was a good way to end her story, where she doesn't come out completely unscathed, but she gets to live. Like, I was okay with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you guys feel that do you feel that it's less impactful knowing that no matter what you do, Clementine stays alive? Like, there's no way that she can die off in this scene. Do you feel that makes it less impactful?
In the moment, I don't think it does. I think for you playing it, I mean, had I known that going into the chapter, absolutely. But like, if I known all of this before even playing it, then yes, I don't think the impact would nearly have stuck. But I feel like for anybody, well, I mean, at least for me, sorry, I feel like knowing this now, even just thinking back to when it first happened, I still think that it was impactful, and I still think they did a pretty decent bait and switch, considering, like, as we were talking about this up until this point, all of the parallels and all of the things that we were thinking this was going to have with season 1's finale, that they kind of like juked us out. And yeah, I still think it's impactful.
I just remember, the reason I asked that is because I've seen a few other people like let's play this game blind, and a couple of them have said something along the line of, because when they saw Clementine alive, they were of course happy and excited, and many of them were like jumping up and down and cheering. And a couple of them said, I made the right choices. And they seemed like so proud of themselves and so happy that they did it correctly.
Mhm.
Not knowing that, well, you can't really fail. Like in this, she's gonna be alive no matter what you choose. So that was sort of like why I asked that question.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have different endings depending on your choices, considering this is the final season. So
Right.
that would have been nice to have divergent paths at the very end.
So you would have preferred that.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Jacob? Would you have preferred that, or would you have preferred? We're just gonna cut the player some slack and just give everybody a happy ending or happy-ish
It
ending.
does seem odd, the lack of branching endings, considering we got that with season 3 as well as season 2. Um, but I feel well, technically there was a video called all 10 endings for the final season, and they're not really different ending. It's just as, do you have a tongueless Lewis that was friend zoned, or do you have a tongueless Lewis who was romance, stuff like that. So you can, so it's like, oh, your interpersonal relationships with Violet or Lewis, whether or not you just friend zoned them or romance them, and then whether or not 10 is there in their place. So that's where all the branching endings come from. And I don't know. I feel like Clementine's personal journey of her final question was, "Did I do a good job protecting you, AJ?"
Oh,
And
yeah.
and depending on, I think, regardless of your answer, Clementine smiles, and Clementine's finally at peace now, knowing that she raised AJ to be independent, and that's
Mhm.
where the story ends.
I'm gonna agree with Mark in that I would prefer if there was a way, if there was a possible ending where Clementine didn't make it, but I'm okay with it being really, really hard to get. Like, I would love it if, yeah, she can die, but you really, really have to try to get her to kill her. You really need to try very hard, but it exists. So I think that would have been better because I feel like, as long as like 90% of players reach the happy ending, but there's like 10% that's probably more realistically you would get if you replayed the game just to see what would happen if you chose obviously bad
Mhm.
choices to get her ultimately killed, then yes. Um, so,
'Cause
but I understand the writers wanting to give everyone a happy-ish
Yeah,
ending.
right,
that
but
idea reminds me of what they tried to do with Gabe in season 3, because they're of the 4 endings in New Frontier, Gabe lives in 3 of them. So he's
Mm,
the hardest character to die, yet but for some reason I think the ending where Gabe dies is by far the most popular ending in terms of which players got endings, because that's by far
mm,
the ending that I see the most often when it comes to Let's Players. So I think they've done goofed with that.
mm.
because like, and I was actually, I'm glad you brought up season 3, because I was gonna say, like, this conversation reminds me a little bit of that. Was because I don't, if they did have an ending where Clem was able to die, I don't think, to some people, I don't think that would necessarily be a bad ending, depending on their choices
Right,
they made. Like, I remember we were talking about
right.
this in season 3, Hark. There is a way, there is ending, sort of like a very extended game over sequence where Javi can die,
Yeah,
but it goes on a long
yeah,
time. But and you said you would have been totally okay if it just cut to credits or something, as opposed to
yeah.
game over, try again.
Yes, 100%. Yes, I liked, as in I thought it was very well
Right,
done, and it was a satisfying, very long game over
right,
sequence.
like all this dialogue.
um, right. I was shocked when they were like continue afterwards. That
Yeah.
really? I was like, I thought that was actually a pretty decent way for the series to end, but
Mm.
yeah. So that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
But I'm happy with her surviving.
Similar to that, David is by far the hardest character to live in season 3, because he only lives in
Mm-hmm.
one out of the 4 endings.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
though I think that was originally meant to be the canonical ending for the season, because it's the only ending where you see Walker Kate, and Walker Kate was on the promotional material before the episode came out, but I think that's the least popular ending people got.
Okay.
Hmm.
I see. All right. And then, the rest of the sequence with the the Erickson kids go. They have supper or lunch or whatever it is they're doing. And,
Ruby feeds a sim.
yes, so
Mhm.
adorable. And then there's a sequence where you either talk to Lewis or you talk to
Violet.
Sam, Violet. Thank you, not Sam. It's Violet. And then
Or 10.
or 10. Yes, thank you. And then Clementine and AJ have that heart-to-heart talk. And then you control AJ for the rest of the episode. So you go into the building, and then you see this really awesome from the you see this really awesome signed hallway from the not yet bitten team.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very well done.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, when I played the game and Let's Played it, I read out and said thank you. I read out every single person's name out loud, and I thanked every single one of them individually because they deserved it. They deserve to be recognized for it. So that was a really cool touch.
I didn't try. I didn't trust myself enough to pronounce all of the different names, but just like I said there, and just to take, I guess, that second again to thank them all so much, because this whole thing could have ended like 3 months ago. We never would have known where it went from there.
Right.
And I'm very happy to have gotten to join them for that whole journey. Also, if Lewis survives, he does give Clementine a card at the dinner table, which, if it's possible to, I guess, pose one question, just thinking on that, is you don't get to see in gameplay what was on the note, but someone on Reddit, they unloaded like the texture file, because they did texture out the whole message, which was Lewis asking out Clementine. And I'm asking this only because I found myself realizing that, so when the whole thing, when season 4 first begun, I had initially friend zoned Lewis and said, "Nah, I think we should just be friends." But I think if I was given another choice there as Clem, I would have had her say yes then at the end of the whole season.
Yeah.
I felt like they had had now enough time to really grow close, and for me to believe that like connection between the two of them was genuine and organic, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I liked the idea of Clementine with Lewis. It's just, so Lewis sent me that message as well, but Clementine had also romanced Violet, and Violet had just died a week before. So I don't know if the timing of that was really all 100%, but I guess if you're in a zombie apocalypse where you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, I guess that's normal. Normal for somebody to be like, "Hey, let's go out."
It's like when if you get the ending where Gabe dies 3 days later, "Hey, Javi, let's start a family."
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's true. That's very true. Good point.
Has it really been a week? Because like it's been at least a few days, but like Abel's corpse hadn't decayed at all. I feel like if it's been a full week, wouldn't, or is that just nitpicky?
Yeah, that's what I. So yeah, the condition of Abel's corpse really confused me. I thought somebody actually mentions it's been a week. I thought so. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what was said or where I saw that, but I thought it was somehow confirmed it had been a week.
So like I had a really weird experience with this episode, because like normally when I do a second playthrough, I wait a few days so I can let the somberness stay with me. But this time I was like nope, I got to play it now, and I tried to engineer it to be 100% identical to my original playthrough, with the only difference being Violet survives.
Yes,
and,
I totally understand.
And Lewis still sends me the note regardless. So even though I romance Violet, so in my mind, I thought it was just because he's tongueless and this is the only way he can talk. I thought he just wrote like a dumb joke on the paper, and that's why Clementine said, "You idiots."
Yeah, initially I thought that too.
I think that's actually a good point. I think you can interpret that in different ways, and I think it fits either way you interpret it.
Plus, if Violet's there, the branching narrative here is, depending on if Lewis was the one you survived to, who you saved in episode 2 as well, they mentioned that there's a caravan beyond the old safe zone, and Clementine sends Violet and or Lewis along with AJ to check if this caravan is friendly, which you don't get that if Ten's alive, because the ending with Ten alive is all about AJ teaching Ten to become, making Ten his Clementine or his AJ, essentially. So
that's interesting. Huh, okay. Yeah, I do remember that with my playthrough. Okay, so you go through the autographed hallway. Skybound Entertainment is at the very end, and then you go into the final room where you can click on different things, some of which you can click multiple times, which is very entertaining, especially with Disco Broccoli and his many friends, his many vegetable friends.
Did you guys find all the collectibles in this episode?
No.
There were 4.
Yeah, I got the
Two of them are found in the cave at the beginning.
Right.
There's a little
yeah.
crystal and another Disco Broccoli toy. And then there's a skull that's found in the fish shack when you're playing as AJ at the end. And then the 4th collectible is James's mask.
Right. And I almost feel like James's mask could be like, I think James's mask could be missable, because for me, I got James's mask in a cutscene. When they just got off the boat, AJ immediately said Clem and like held it up in the cutscene. There was no opportunity for me to find it, so I almost wonder if that is just a collectible where, if James didn't die for you, that's just that.
Yeah.
I just looked at the wiki, and it says if James lived, and after his big speech about his more philosophy with AJ, of 3 out of the 4 dialogue options make James leave the cave in disgust. And if you pick the right dialogue, he stays behind in the cave to fend off the walkers for you. And if you get that ending, you can't get James's mask. But if you get the 3 endings where he just leaves the cave in disgust, AJ picks it up, just like in the ending where James died in our playthrough.
Gotcha.
So if James hates you, you can get the mask, or if James is dead, you can get it. But if he kind of likes you slightly more than he used to, then you can't get it.
Oh well.
Okay.
They never confirmed if James died there. I think everyone says he did.
Kent Muddle said he lived.
I'm sorry?
The creative director says Kent Muddle said James lives on his own in the woods, but he's no longer on speaking terms with Clementine.
Well, that's too bad. That's a shame. That's very sad. But I'm glad to hear the confirmation that he's still alive. So, yeah. So you go and click things, and then you finally decide whether or not you're done with the hat as you put it onto the table.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end.
Yeah. And like, I like it. I like that it even still was left with a little bit of a, like, I guess maybe not a cliffhanger, I guess, so to speak. It was open-ended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just enough hope, you know, that it's open-ended where you could imagine what happens next, what other adventures there might be with this group later. Like, Krista arrives out of nowhere and reunites with Clementine.
We'll figure that out.
That's the first thing I am fan fictioning is Krista arrives.
There is a fan fiction out there that Javier and his surviving Garcia family members left Richmond, met up with Krista, and together they're the caravan group.
Yes.
I'm like, that is definitely not it, but good luck with your fan fiction, friend.
And Krista actually successfully had another child. Successfully had another child, which she calls Omid.
Omid.
That's my fan fiction. So, yeah. So, how do you guys think this season as a whole? Well, let me before I ask that, how do you think this episode compares to the other 3?
I think it was pretty solid. I still think I want to say that episode 2 still had some very strong moments for me, and episode 3 had some great character dialogue and development and stuff. I would say episode 4 would The only thing I think that this episode was missing, because I'll say I think episode 3 is my favorite. I think what this episode was missing, which you could, I mean, I'll leave it up to you if you agree or not, is I almost feel like this episode could have done with maybe one last or something like flashback dream sequence with Lee.
Yes.
I feel like that was the last thing that this episode was missing to just be perfect.
There was one in development, but it was cut.
Dang. Do we have any is there any script files or anything that could have said what maybe the conversation would have been about?
It was originally going to take place at Clementine's home as a nice reflector of now it's all come full circle.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
There was also another Kenny flashback in development that was cut too. The reasoning behind that was they thought the additional Kenny and Jane flashbacks they added last minute in season 3 of episode 4 thought that was a nice closure to Kenny. Plus, I feel like if they added another Kenny flashback without a Jane flashback, that would have betrayed those players at the same time, because they couldn't really do another Jane flashback because she died so quickly in comparison to Kenny. So it's what would you even show with another Jane flashback?
Right.
And if they had done another Kenny flashback and another Jane flashback, but no Luke flashback, I would have rioted.
It would have gone to
rioted.
Can we just have can we just have that be our episode 5?
But Luke always dies in episode 5. There is no Luke ending.
Which means a flashback is exactly what we need to actually get that closure.
Maybe that'll be, I was say, we have 4 episodes. Maybe that'll be our episode 5. Just a big flashback clip. That's like our clip show where we go back with the greatest moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
The greatest moments.
That is interesting because it's if you to talk about each season being its own self-contained story, you name it after the person who is the central relationship of Clem with that season. With season 1, it's Lee. Season 3, it's Javier. Season 4, it's AJ. With season 2, it's you're jerking back between Kenny, Luke, and Jane.
Which if we talk about the whole series, I can definitely bring that up. But yeah, I think with the season, episode 4 was a very strong. I felt satisfied with closure.
Mark?
Yeah, it was a really good episode. And I thought it closed out Clementine's story really, really well.
How would you rank it to the other 3?
That's tough. Because I feel like... I honestly feel like the entire season for me was equal. It's there weren't really standout episodes. I was this one is clearly better than the other. And it's and I like this one more. It's I thought as a whole it was pretty equal for me.
How did you guys feel about this season compared to the other 4 or the other 3?
Clearly season 1's at the top for me, and for second place is a competition between season 2 and season 4 for me. But the thing is, though, I feel like if I were to just say as a game, I would probably say season 4 is better because it's a better complete package. Because with season 2, 75% of season 2 I really adore, and there's that 25% that comes with it that I'm not the biggest fan of. But the 75% I do I like more than season 4. But season 4 is a better complete picture, so I'm torn which one I like more. And then a lot of the major criticisms towards season 3 I disagree with. I agree with a lot of the major ones, but it's still at the bottom for me because I like the other seasons more.
So again, no surprise here. Season 1 is the top one. It is the best. As for season 2 and season 3, those were really good seasons, and this was a really good season as well. Although I do want to mention, it's funny because I really do like A New Frontier, but I feel like because of this season, it almost feels inconsequential.
Yeah.
Because of barely any references to Javi, and there's barely any carryover. I actually feel like season 1, 2, and 4 actually make a nice trilogy. If you cut out the flashback and any references to A New Frontier, if you played 1, 2, and then just went straight to 4, think about it. It's a nice trilogy.
Yeah, I feel like the transition is most smooth if you got the Clem on her own ending for season 2. But yeah, other than that, yeah, it does. It does fit pretty well.
Big source of conflict for season 3 was just, Clem gets in contact with some dude, and he separates her and AJ, and then later on she unknowingly befriends that dude's brother. They just happened to choose to tell the story from the perspective of the brother instead of Clem, and made Clem the side character.
Huh.
And so David is in conflict with Javi and Clem, because David's like, no, Clem, we're keeping AJ. So do you trust David or not? So, and that source of conflict only works with a character like Clem, because you, the player, know her, but Javi doesn't. So do you stay in character with Javi and trust your family, or do you, the player, go, nope, Clem all the way?
Right.
Mm-hmm. How does this season stack up for you, Logan?
Definitely, yeah, I'll agree. Again, season 1, I think, was the best, just because that was like the first big, the first big foray into all this, and drawing back to it between like Lee's death versus Clementine's death, that was our introduction. And back then, I didn't know that you were allowed or you could have the player character die like that. And so all of those deaths, like that permanence in all your choices, I think felt much like I was not as expectant of it, or like mentally prepared for all that stuff. So it hit a lot harder than season 4, where by season 4 it was like not going through the motions, but it was familiar enough to me that it did not shock me as much as season 1 stuff did. Season 3 I thought was pretty solid, although I think season 4, I enjoyed the social connections in season 4 more than with season 3. Although I did like season 3 giving a new character to work with, and that was what I enjoyed about season 1. And season 2 still, unfortunately, was just kind of the lower point for the whole series, just because like what Jacob was bringing up, was that they threw a lot of different characters, a lot of different things, and there was a lot of inconsistencies. The choices I remember were very much like 90% to 10% are going to do this, whereas I felt the choices in 3 and especially in 4 were much more right down the middle. They're great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think season 4 would be a solid like second place for me, actually.
Yeah, for me, again, just agree with everybody. Season 1 is at the top. Season 4 for me is second. Season 2 for me was third, even though I do agree with Lucky Jack on many of the shortcomings that season 2 had. And season 3, although it is in the bottom for me, I still really liked season 3. And along with Jacob, I don't agree with many of the criticisms that people had with season 3. But it just happens to be my least favorite of the 4. So, with Michonne on number 5. Even though I love Michonne. But yeah.
I just feel like Kenny's, when I was talking about how there's like that 75% of season 2 that I like more than season 4, I was talking about how Kenny essentially becomes Old Yeller in that season, or he's becoming so deteriorated. Do you put him down or not? And I like how, depending on how you play, Kenny's final moment is either one of selfishness or one of selflessness, which is stabbing Jane or take the kids, leave the kids at Wellington. So, but like I said, season 4 is a much better overall package. So,
does anyone have any final thoughts about this whole franchise as a whole?
I remember that I kind of took a leap of faith when I think it was either you or someone else recommended that I give the series a try, and I didn't think it would be this multi-year like journey, and I'm happy that they still had things for me to come back to and experience like new things. And I don't think the series ever felt stale with these 4.5, we don't count Michonne, installments. And it was truly, I think, a one in a maybe not 1 in a million. I mean, it seems like a bit of a overreach, but it definitely felt like a unique game that I don't think I'm going to play another game and not help but think of Telltale's Walking Dead as like inspiration, or I would compare it to this.
I have one more thing I want to talk about. I remember someone, I can't remember if this was before Telltale shut down or if this was somebody at Skybound that said this, but they said that when we called it the final season, it wasn't meant to technically be the end of The Walking Dead. That just means the end of Clementine's story. And then they said Telltale would not be against returning to The Walking Dead in the future, but just through the lens of other characters. And I'm just like, when I read that, I'm like, did you just indirectly confirm Javier season 2? Or did you not? But just this time without Clem.
That is funny. Javier season 2. Or Krista season 1.
I don't know.
I want my Krista. Anyway.
And anybody else interested in more deleted content for this final season? Because I just found out a little bit more like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Apparently, so someone asked Kent Muddle on Twitter. So I was wondering if, since most of the boarding school students survive, was there any plans or old versions of the script where Ruby, Asim, Willie, or Omar die? And they were like, yes, there was an old version where Omar died. Apparently, Omar died in a very early version of the bridge scene in this final episode, and that was what caused Ten to freak out. They realized Minnie showing up made much more sense. And then they go on to say, no, Ruby, Asim, and Willie were always going to live because they wanted Clem's rescue mission to be a success and get out as many people as possible. So once again, Omar gets the short end of the stick.
Gosh dang it, Omar.
Oh.
I wonder if you took every line of dialogue from the season and put it together.
It would probably be like 5 minutes. Apparently there was one other deleted Omar scene, which was in episode 2, he was going to be seen with Ruby putting the walker heads on the spikes, but that was cut.
I guess
5 whole seconds of Omar.
That doesn't even sound like it would have even I don't even see why they.
Kent Munnell goes on to explain he would have liked to have a bunch of 3 or 4 more Omar tier characters at the school, but budgetary reasons for character models prevented them from doing so. And he explains this thought process by, can you tell me the name of every single background character in Rick's group? Omar was meant to just fill out the world more, and he defends Omar's lack of character by saying, this is why we never give you a direct Omar choice. He's always paired with characters that you do care about. You have to save Asim and or Violet and Lewis with Omar.
Right.
Because they understand it would be a very flaw in the game where you have to save Omar and someone you do care about.
Right.
There was also They also revealed why Asim got sent to Erickson's boarding school for troubled youth. Apparently he was a pyromaniac and he lit stuff on fire, and he was cured right before the outbreak.
Shoot.
Oh,
One
wow.
moment.
So they were one more to early retirement.
But that is
Oh,
interesting.
man.
Because that was another thing. After they started sharing them around, I wonder what had Omar sent there.
There was one fan fiction I found that I like to think is why he got sent there, because of his role at the school as the chef at the school. At high school or whatever, he hated cafeteria food and refused to eat it and was starving himself to death or something because of it.
Oh.
And so they sent him there to cure that. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I like to think, because it's troubled youth, maybe that's why he got sent, but it's not been confirmed why.
There.
They didn't need to confirm why Mitch got sent there in the game in episode 3, because they said in episode 2 he got sent because he made bombs at home or something.
Right. And
That makes sense.
and we don't know about Willie.
We don't know. Well, Willie, they
We
kind
know
of confirmed
allegedly
Willie,
about Willie.
but they kind of don't. The ones that they didn't confirm were Brody, the twins, Tennessee, and Asim, but they confirmed why Asim went there off screen. Just.
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, I guess they didn't say why Marlon went there either. I just remembered that too.
Oh yeah.
True. Yeah.
You know what? I would almost argue that. Marlon was sent there because of anger management or whatever, just of what happened between him and Brody. I would argue that was the reason, where he just didn't deal with stress well.
Possibly.
That would be my guess.
And you don't think the kids knew that and decided to make him leader?
I feel like he hid it, maybe.
Maybe he hit it.
Because I mean, like, he didn't show any signs of anger management until that final scene. He
Right.
was so
True.
nice to you at the beginning of the episode.
He was.
I think maybe it was like maybe he relapsed in that moment because he thought he had things under control until realizing that
They were back.
people were coming back, and now it was.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be him, and because I can, not that bad, but I can attest that I've been in situations like that where I'm usually pretty calm unless like serious things like go completely wrong, and now I'm trying to like panic, trying to make everything work again. I don't know, but yeah, I think solid season.
Mark, do you have any parting words before we close?
It's been one hell of a ride, and I'm really glad to have been on it. Yes, I've definitely had many criticisms for each of the 4 seasons. There are definitely things that could have been improved and done differently, but ultimately, I'm very happy to have been on this journey, grown attached to Clementine. She's one of the best characters, not just video game characters, not just female video game characters or female characters, just one of the best characters, period. She is great. And I'm very, very happy that we got to see this season in particular through to completion, because we had a scare right there, and I'm very happy to see it concluded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. We probably aren't able to say this enough, but thank you to everyone who was involved in allowing us to finish this story, even though you all did not have to do it. All of the developers and programmers and everyone, Skybound, is of course, and Robert Kirkman, who allowed us to finally see how Clementine's story ends, despite all of the circumstances that led to where we are now. Thank you again to Telltale Games in general. Despite what some of the management had done, thank you for the ride that you gave us. Their games were not always perfect, and a lot of people have their own personal complaints and criticisms on their games, especially with their formula. But I will definitely miss Telltale, and I still will remember them fondly, warts and all. Thank you to Lucky Jack and to Mark and to Jacob, as well as Reclusiarch / David / Artifactor, and Kathleenums, and Carson, and Alex, who have all participated in this Walking Dead podcast throughout the seasons. Thank you guys for participating and spending hours talking and overanalyzing games like this with me. It's been very enjoyable. Cool. All right. So that's it, everybody. Thank you again for hanging out with us one last time. I'm sure that we'll have other Let's Talks in the future, but at least for this particular series, this particular franchise from this particular gaming company, this is going to be the final one. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed the deep conversations that we've had and maybe learned a thing or two. And I guess I will see you guys later. So until next time, everybody, love yourselves and love each other.